Reddit. We have all heard guys' stories of getting caught masturbating. But we rarely hear of the flip side of the coin. Ladies, have you ever been caught twiddling your jelly bean? Conversely, has anyone caught a girl in the act? Story 1. I was sharing a room with a male colleague and couldn't get to sleep. Looked over to his bed and saw that he was sound asleep, stuck my hand under the blankets and started flicking the bean. About 10 minutes later. I was getting right into it, and I heard, "You want a hand with that?" Turns out he wasn't asleep, as I am really good at dealing with awkward situations. I did the only logical thing, squealed and fell out of the bed, panties still around my ankles. I stayed on the floor for about 5 minutes, hoping that I would somehow disappear, then got up to see him still shaking with silent laughter, only for him to burst out laughing when he saw my beet-red face. He managed to get out of "Where you wanking?" and I was able to explain myself. I couldn't sleep. He shrugged and said fair enough, then rolled over and went back to sleep. Story 2. I grew up in a house where there were no locks on the doors. We all had to share rooms with siblings, and my mom was nosy as hell. I was 18. So ducking horny, my little sister was actually gone at a friend's house. I had just gotten out of the shower, was sitting on my bed with a towel wrapped around me, and a smooth-handled hairbrush in my hand. I started thinking about how I could duck that brush. I was so horny my putty was throbbing, begging to be penetrated. I sat with my hair-wet toes twiddling, looking at that brush, thinking of all the sexual things I would do to it. Just then my mother bursts in, and even though I was only holding the brush and not doing anything sexual with it at all, I flung the brush with all my might across my bedroom, and it collided with my dresser mirror and cracked it. My mom got the most disgusted look on her face and yelled while pointing at my crotch that I had to buy a new brush and mirror, and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. "You want to know why I had sex before marriage, Mom? Because you guys made it impossible and unacceptable to give in to healthy urges in my own goddamn bedroom." Story 3. When I was still a teenager living with my parents, I was caught once by my brother. See, my parents had an open-door policy where our doors had to be open at all times, unless we were changing, and depending on how long that took, you may get a visitor to make sure you were. I was enjoying a new purchase of a vibrator. When my little brother walked into my room in the middle night, luckily it was too dark for him to see anything. But I had to come up with a reason for the vibrating noise, claiming it was my cell phone. Needless to say, after that I partook in the shower more than my bed. Story 4. When I first discovered masturbating, I did it all the time. Weird thing is, I can't have multiple orgasms, so I have a refractory period of sorts. I have one, immediately want to fall asleep, and can't go at it again for at least 15 minutes. So when I first started, I would go at it like 3 to 5 times a day, just disappearing into my room, orgasming, then taking mini naps, rinse and repeat somewhere along the lines. I think my mom caught wind of what was going on one day. She was knocking on my door. I didn't have a lock, and she got the usual frantic, "Give me a second." She said, "Are you masturbating?" I said no, but she knew. She knew my roommate and boyfriend also caught me one day. I woke up horny as hell for whatever reason, and saw or thought I saw that my roommate had gone to class. I masturbated all the way to completion, a good 3 to 5 minutes, then collapsed back into sleep. About 15 minutes later, I heard her get up, get dressed quickly, and leave. We never spoke about it. But things were kind of weird between us for a while after that. Story 5. I'm a girl, and I went on holiday with a good friend, also a girl, and her parents when I was around 16. It was a camping holiday, and me and my friend shared a double air mattress and duvet for the 2 weeks we were there. It was a fabulous holiday until the 4th or 5th last day before we left. When I got woken up, I am a ridiculously light sleeper, by my friend digging for treasure one night. Needless to say, I lay still and silent until she had found and released the pearl in her clam, and given it the freedom it deserved. But it was one of the most uncomfortable situations I have ever been in, and even now, nearly 10 years later, I still haven't said a word. Story 6. I was around 9 or 10 and had just started exploring. So after a shower, I would sit on the toilet cover right across from the tub and just poke around one time. My mother does the "I knocked one time," so I'm coming in to see if I'm done with my feet still perched on the tub and my legs spread open. I stare wide-eyed at her and immediately grabbed the crossword puzzle next to me on the counter. She said, "Oops," and closed the door. I think she knew, partly because I wasn't even holding a pen for the crossword. This one time I walked in on my girlfriend masturbating. I was visiting her house to surprise her. It was our anniversary. I had gotten her parents to let me into the house about an hour before I was supposed to be there. And she had no idea. I kinda crept up the stairs, being as quiet as I could. When I got near her room, I could hear her bed shaking a little and the sort of wet noise. I slowly opened the door, saw her masturbating, said, "Need a hand?" She looked up at me, hand down her pants, and said, "No, but I really need tree feedy." It was about this time I realized she was a giant crustacean from the Paleolithic era. Story 7. Not so much masturbating, but my mom once found some pubes in the toilet that I had not properly disposed of when I was 16. I'm 21 now. Possibly more mortifying than if I'd been caught masturbating. My mom came into my room. "Namedor, can you come here?" Sure." So we walk into the bathroom and she points to the toilet. "What's that?" At this point, I realized exactly what it was. Duck. I mosey on over to the toilet and look inside. Yep, towards my pubes. And it had been a long winter. At this point, I figured I'm screwed and was just waiting for my mom to make the next move, and the ensuing conversation will live with me forever. "Mom, where is that from?" Me, ooh, flushes toilet. My bikini line. This was the least awkward way I could think of instead of saying to my mom. "Mom, why did you do that?" Me, because I felt like it. "Mom, who's gonna see that?" Me, nobody. Mom, extended silence. That's gross. Story 8. I was a pro at stealth masturbating because I was paranoid about my parents catching me even though it never happened. I only ever did it at night, under the covers, and made minimal noise if any. My mom did once walk in on me attempting to shave my pubes once when I was about 13. God, was that awkward. Leg up on the bathtub, razor in one hand, mirror in the other when she knocks on the door. My mother's door knock. "May I come in?" They were more like in exactly 1 second, "I'm coming in regardless." Yeah. Okay. So I hear the knock and panic. I drop the razor and mirror into the bath and grab the nearest object, a shower cap, to cover myself with. She walks in, stares from my face to my crotch and back again about 3 times, and then walks back out without a word. Later on, she tried to casually inform me about what pubic hair is for and why it shouldn't be shaved off, as if she'd never seen a thing, but she knew. She knew. Story 9. I walked in on my 16-year-old younger brother having sex with his girlfriend once. The strange part of it was that I had just remembered the name of the 10th guild, Azorius, in Magic: The Gathering. We were naming them off earlier, and I needed to tell him before I forgot. I open his door. They are there, she's on top, made a few little noises, then shut up when she realized I was in the room. I got Andrew, it's Azorius. The last one's Azorius, he goes, "Aha," and I'm just like, "Shot door," and backs away. Story 10. I've been caught with my hands down my pants. Or for a more juicy story. A few years back now, there was one time I was masturbating in a friend's lounge room while drinking, when no one was supposed to be home for hours. It was also on webcam to my boyfriend at the time. Cue my friend walking in on me with pants down, legs spread wide. We have never spoken of it again. Best busted story I have. Story 11. I was once caught by my younger brother when I was about 15. It was late at night, and as per my usual routine, I started getting busy once everyone was asleep. I was mid-orgasm when my brother walked into my room without knocking. He asked me if I was crying. The lights were out so he could only hear me. I naturally started to fake cry and made up a reason for my sadness. To this day, I don't know if he knows what he actually walked in on. Story 12. So this was when I was first experimenting with things down there. Not sure on my age. Pretty young, though maybe around 7. I had a stuffed animal in between my legs and was sort of humping, squirming around, and my nan walks in. I lived with her and my pop and uncles at the time, so it could have been worse, but she then smacked my arse. After that, I didn't even think about masturbating again until I was about 13. Makes me cringe just thinking about it now, and I'm 25. Story 13. I started when I was less than 5. I constantly started touching myself to the point of little kid orgasm when I was younger, in front of my parents, my grandparents, etc. I was eventually taught that I should not do that kind of thing in front of other people, that it was something to do in private. Pretty enlightened thinking for my Catholic mother. She caught me plenty of other times. I kind of had a stealthy way of doing it. I haven't met many people who pleasure themselves in the same way I do. I once tried to demonstrate on how to do it for my little brother. Again, I was young, like 6, but obviously the parts were different and would not result in the same. Well, you get the idea. I've become somewhat of a professional in my opinion. My adolescent record was around 15 times before I stopped counting. If there was a gold medal for fastest orgasm, I think I would win it. Now for when I caught someone else doing it. My freshman year in college, I was getting used to sharing a room for the first time in my life. I used to masturbate before going to sleep. It was my cure for insomnia. If my roommate was already asleep, I'd stealth my way into dreamland and then to sleep. One night I assumed she was already asleep and went to town with little movement, controlled breathing. She was not as skilled in the act of covert masturbation as I was. Midway through my twiddle-de-day, I hear some heavier breathing from the other side of the room. I paused. Yep, that's what I thought it was. She was breathing heavy, there was a rustling of sheets, and I tried to convince myself she was just dreaming. Until she rolled over, pulled the covers up and settled herself. It was an awkward few minutes to say the least. Me laying there thinking, is this a good time to finish? She's obviously distracted, but I let her have her own time, wondering if she ever knew when I was doing it. I really doubt she did because I didn't know how she'd handle approaching the subject. So I let her go on, pretending I was none the wiser. Then I finished myself neatly and quietly and went to sleep. Story 14. I can't believe I'm responding about masturbation to someone whose username is the name I call my grandma. Story time. So I'm like 14 years old, recently discovered porn. I'm in the family office, didn't have a laptop, around 2, thinking everyone is asleep. Now this office isn't a typical office. My dad doesn't believe in using a normal computer monitor. He has a huge 50 flat screen on the wall hooked up to the computer. Awesome viewing, Amy, right? I click on the first link on the only website I know. It's titled Dad Ducks Horny Daughter, or something along those lines. Now, I'm not into incest or anything like that, but hey, porn is porn, and I'm smart enough to know it's not actually a dad and daughter ducking. So I'm getting into it, hand down my pants, furiously flicking away, and I hear the door open behind me. I spin around, and my dad is standing there. He looks at the massive screen with the incest playing, looks at me with my hands down my pants, turns around and walks out. Never said a word. Story 15. I used to masturbate a lot to porn. I'm talking almost every day. I work nights in my beau works days. That makes a sex life hard. One day, he had just gone to work and I was ready to watch some raunchy shit so I could get off and go to bed. As usual, I kept an ear out in case he'd come home. I was on the bed watching some chick getting pounded from behind when I heard a creak. There he was, staring at me, an evil grin on his face. I was mortified. Thankfully, I was fully clothed, but he never did let me live it down. Story 16. I was sitting with one of my friends in her room while she was laying on her bed. I started Skyping my friend, and about 20 minutes in, my friend leans into the cam and squints as if trying to look through me. I ask him what he's looking at, and he blurts out, "Is she playing with herself?" At that moment, I spin around in my chair and catch her with her hand in her pants, giving me the deer in the headlights look with a beet red face. We dated for 6 months shortly after that and walked in on her several times following. By the way, I am a guy. Story 17. I wasn't exactly caught in the act, but my daughter was doing homework and went to get something out of my room and came out to tell me and my husband. There was a funny noise. I just assumed it was the washer since the laundry room was right next door. She shrugged and went back into my room and started screaming. She came into the living room and pointed at me and promptly said, You go turn off your vibrator." I guess it turned on and was hitting the bed frame. Good thing for a 12-year-old to find. Should give her stories to tell the therapist one day. Story 18. I used to work in the service industry, and I drove a pretty tall truck around all day. The things I saw, like I had no idea so many women masturbate while driving. Driving a normal vehicle wouldn't really give you the view I had. But during the summer months, I would get really excited about being stuck at a stoplight next to a pretty lady. The odds just seemed favorable that she would be casually jilling and too into it to care about whoever is spectating. I had a few ladies turn and notice the invasion of privacy, but I was amazed that they would just keep going. Ladies, is this a thing you do on purpose? Because I gotta say, it's pretty hot. Story 19. I think I was 12, just after I had hit puberty and discovered how awesome it was to touch myself. My parents had gone out, and I'm about halfway through. Usually you can hear whoever comes in and out of our house, but I must have been so into it, I didn't hear them come home. All of a sudden, my mom is bursting into my room while I'm simultaneously throwing a blanket over my lower half. She then proceeds to think I'm hiding something and demands I move the blanket. I was literally in tears, telling her I wasn't hiding anything and that I didn't want to move it. Eventually, she just dropped it, the issue, not the blanket, and left. I signed the biggest sigh of relief, put my panties and pants back on, which had been on the floor beside my bed in plain view, with no other clothes in sight. My underwear was bunched up inside my pants, like when you take them off at the same time. Either she didn't notice or pretended not to. Story 20. I remember going to barbecue party at a friend's new house. I got obliterated and fell asleep early. As such, my body woke me up before almost everyone else as well. When I woke up, I looked across the room and saw some motion in the recliner, across from me. My glasses were on the table next to me, so I wasn't sure what I was seeing, but I assumed it was the couple at the party that were getting a little frisky. I reached over and grabbed my glasses as silently as possible. Focused on the chair, and it turned out to be the girl I came to the party with. She was going to town flicking the bean under a sheet, but the hand movement was obvious. Also happened to be the girl that I had a huge crush on, but I was friend zone. I definitely wanted to sneak over and ask her if she wanted a hand, but that would have involved possibly waking up the people sleeping on the floor between us in the room. She probably would have never spoken to me again. Can't say I didn't replay that a few different ways in my mind for the weeks to come. Story 21. I have a special box that serves as a bedside table and contains my stuff, condoms, lube, vibrators, etc. It's handy anyway. My parents were helping me move house last year. My mom's waiting with the car downstairs while me and my dad are taking stuff down to her. I had just come back up from taking a bunch of clothes downstairs, walked into my room to see my dad pick up this box. He must have noticed it was pretty light, so he shakes it, hears a rattle, and opens the box to squeeze some more stuff in. He then proceeds to slam the box shut, hand it to me, pick up a bundle of blankets, and march downstairs, not saying a thing. Words have not yet been exchanged on the matter, and I doubt they ever will be. Story 22. I work on a tugboat, and one of the places we tie up requires that the security guard comes down to see you land and depart, just to make sure you don't do any damage to the pilings. Well, we were getting underway to meet an inbound ship, and we like to give ourselves plenty of time to get there early, so my shipmate started calling security on their cell number. No answer, no answer. Again, no answer. The ship is starting to get close, and we need to go, but if we leave without a witness, they charge us a fine $500, I think. So he decides he's going to go up on the dock, walk down to the guard shack, and bang on the door, figuring the girl on duty is just asleep or something. He gets there, bangs on the door, and as he's opening the door to the office, he hears her say, "I'm not decent." Before the words register, he opened the door, looked over, and caught her with her pants around her ankles, and the phone in her hand must have been having phone sex with her fella. Well, he came scurrying back to the boat and said to just get underway. He couldn't bring himself to tell us what he'd seen until we were already gone. Still see her from time to time.